You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello everybody and welcome to our next edition of the Fezcast, episode 41 of a season that seems to have gone on quite some time, but for the men has ended at long last. And Loxie, you're joining us tonight, says your blushes slightly. If we'd got past Exeter Tuesday weekend, we were going to tee up where you said it was never going to happen. And also joining us is Alex and Sam, because there's women's rugby to talk about as well as everything. So good evening, folks. How are you all?
Very well, thank you, Jez. Lovely to see everybody. Just to pick you up on that, Jez, about my blushes and so forth, I actually bought a ticket for the final. So I was doubly gutted after the weekend, and we'll probably return to that.
Well, yeah, we will do. Hope springs eternal, doesn't it? But it's always the hope that kills you. How's you, Alex? You doing good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm done with my exams, so I can chill now.
Woohoo! Excellent. Well, hopefully we'll get some great results. When do you get your results?
August, so I've got to wait a while.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well, you just fill your time with rugby now, so Alex, so that's the main thing, isn't it? And that's coming up with, hopefully 2 more games for the women. And Sam, you're back on the show this week. How's you, mate? Soberer than you were when we were discussing stuff on WhatsApp on the weekend.
Yes, well, yeah, it was a nice trip down there, but yeah, it was my birthday weekend, so yeah, I took the handbrake off a little bit more than I should have, but hey, there we go.
It's only your 60th birthday every now and then, isn't it? You know, and after last week we're accusing you of being Macho Man Randy Savage, you decided to do Hacksaw Jim Duggan this week.
Yeah, I'm just churning out these 80s images of wrestlers for you, Jez. So, yeah, I'll keep them coming, mate.
I'm looking forward to the Ultimate Warrior, to be perfectly honest with you. And Alex, that's probably gone straight over your head, but don't worry about it. Just watch YouTube or something. And me and Loxie will talk about Kendo Nagasaki and Dick and Burt Braun and whatever. So what are we going to do tonight? Well, we're going to do it in reverse order. So we'll finish off with the game against Exeter Chiefs. Well, I'll have a little bit of talk about Mount McCall, but first off, we'll talk about the women and a number of things for the women, really. But first of all, it's been announced today, we're recording on Monday, obviously, nominations for all the various different awards for the women in the PWR. And I have to say, congratulations to May Campbell, top try scorer. I think she's joint top scorer, isn't she, Alex?
Yeah, joint Mia Venner.
Which isn't bad, considering she's a hooker who spent the last couple of games out injured with a damaged knee.
Yeah, I was definitely slightly nervous that Mia Venner was going to score on the weekend and go above May, but luckily she didn't, so May kind of keeps that because she's been great for us all season.
Absolutely fantastic. We'll talk about Bryony Field a bit later on because, I mean, she's had to step into some big shoes there. Try of the season, Alex, I'm going to defer to you again on this one. Tori Sellers and Emma Hardy. Just remind us which ones they were, because I'm sure you'll know.
Yeah, Emma Hardy was the one against Gloucester Hartbury at the StoneX, which was good. And I don't know which one Tori Sellers were. Both of them were good tries. I watched them when they put out them out on Instagram. They're both good.
England Player of the Year, Zoe Harrison, undoubtedly, Loxie deserves that accolade. There's been some great performances by the women. Fionnati at number 8's done particularly well for England this year. But Zoe Harrison's been just different custard through the World Cup and into the Six Nations.
We've even frightened the pundits into recognising it now, which was great fun. Yeah, she's pulled the strings. If this was American football and you could bring on a specialist kicker, I think there's a few men's sides who would actually deploy Zoe in that capacity, probably Emma Singh as well, for that matter. But of course, it is an American football, and I've banged on really about her all-round game. She hits rucks, she tackles hard, she's got quite a sort of tough streak in her. She throws out beautiful passes, she runs good lines, she's got twinkling feet that people don't see enough of. And of course, the kicking, well, we all know how good that is from hand and from tee. Yeah, just Zoe Harrison.
Zoe has benefited this year, Sam, from having our nominated player for player of the season, Liv Apps, playing inside. And that's nothing to take away from Tori Sellers and the other girls who've played scrum half. But Liv Apps has made a significant difference, and in a lot of games has been the absolute linchpin upon what Saracens' performances have been built on.
I only caught the extended highlights of yesterday's game. I'm obviously travelling back from Exeter, but yeah, it's just so smooth with Liv in the side. It's quick, it's fast, it's precise. It's just made Zoe look better. It's done wonders this year.
And the other, obviously, nomination is for Alex Osterbury as Coach of the Year. And I think that's been, really good. I think last season we were sort of discussing, weren't we, Alex, and saying Alex Osterbury needs a big season this season because we hadn't won anything for a couple of seasons. And I mentioned it to him at one of the SSA events where I said, no big dance, no big trophy. And he got a little bit, I'll not say sniffy or anything, but it clearly brickled him a little bit because he's come into this season, he's brought in Kevin Rouet to help out, which has been a great addition to the coaching side, but he's got a fire about him again, has driven that team on. I will say that he won't feel he will have deserved Coach of the Year unless we do pick up that trophy at the end of the season, Alex.
It's very much like whoever can win that vinyl, because there's been a lot of changeover with her coach. Gloucester have a new head coach. Bristol have got a new head coach. But actually, Alex wants to say, we've not had a great couple of seasons. We've not got where we wanted to, but actually we're going to come back this season and do that. We will get to that final. We will put ourselves in the best chance of winning. We've definitely made the changes, bringing in people like Liv Apps and Kevin Murray to say, these are the changes we need to get back to the level we were at.
I admire your confidence there in stark contrast to the lads last week when I asked, are we going to do it against Exeter Chiefs? And it was sort of like a bit like, well, not sure, which is quite right. But I mean, you're clearly in the camp that the momentum is there. We're driving on. It's a home semi-final against Exeter and we're going to get to that final, which is great to see. But before we got to that final, before we got to that semi-final, we had the small matter of Ealing Trailfinders on Sunday. And Loxie, I assume you were at the game?
I was at the game. Very different selection processes, I noted, from both sides. Trailfinders shot and beat Gloucester Hartbury last week, who then proceeded to lose this week again to Bristol Bears. So Trailfinders, safe in fourth place, brought about half a second team, a lot of youngsters along, whereas Saracens were still flexing the muscles of the senior squad. So it was always a chance with nothing really riding on it because Saracens had their home semi-final and Trailfinders had their fourth place. It was rather a pleasure to come back from Exeter and have an afternoon where there was relatively little riding on it, really. But of course, I'm not so sure how Trailfinders would feel about beating 80-14, and it could have been worse than that, to be honest.
Basically, we did a job and we did it very well. But essentially speaking, what I did find is watching it on television, the commentary, I mean, I watched it with my wife, Sharon, and she mentioned about Claire Thomas and commentary, and thought, has that woman swallowed the dictionary of cliches or something? Because, I mean, she brings them all out, doesn't she? I absolutely ruins the commentary for me. But also, Herald and Monia, I mean, I understand that they're trying to build the game up. They're trying to get some jeopardy into it. At the end of the day, we were never in trouble, and they gave Ealing Trailfinders far too much credit in a defeat by 66 points.
Ealing knew that they probably weren't going to come to the StoneX and win, and went, we'll give some of the younger players a go. We'll rest some of our players so we're ready for the semi-finals. Actually, I think they knew they were expecting to come and get beaten by quite a bit. You know, we got the bonus point in about 25 minutes, and that kind of summed up, was like, Saracens are just going to keep going. We're going to keep scoring. And actually, we're just going to kind of make sure all of our players are ready for the semis. Whereas Ealing was very much, we don't want any more players to get injured. So we're going to rest players. We're going to get beaten, probably by a lot. The players that had put up a decent fight, but actually it was just a complete mix of abilities between the two sides.
The big issue, though, for us, and the issue that will get exploited by better teams as we go into the knockout stages is discipline. And at one point, we were 13 players on the pitch playing against 15. Because it was Trailfinders women and a second string, we got away with it. But if we go down to 13 players against Exeter or in a final against Gloucester or whoever, it won't go well. So that's something we really do have to tighten up on, isn't it?
Absolutely. Ealing changed the whole 23 from last week. Yeah, we kind of got away with it. But like you say, better teams, it's a numbers game. Going down to 13, you're going to get punished. But we've got to maintain that discipline and that focus for the whole 80 next week.
The only thing I will say about it, Loxie, and you were down there by the side in your normal position with all the rest of the gobby ones, Stone X, flying your flags and everything. I thought the referee had a pretty good game, all told, although the Sophie de Goody try that was chalked off. I mean, that was minimal leg propulsion. I mean, I thought she just reached out and it was a perfectly good try. And let's be honest about it, you want to see those tries given, not brought back for a minuscule infringement there. However, I thought he did pretty well. There was a period of time when we went down to 13. Okay, one of those was Poppy Cleal, new onto the field, just got caught out a little bit. They got the right decision. It was a yellow card, nothing worse than that. Those are sort of rugby incidents that happen, that is foul play, whatever. But there was an element at one point I thought that Ealing would be given penalties that perhaps they shouldn't be given because they could see the way the game was going. And I don't know whether that came over by the side of the pitch a little bit.
I'm not that familiar with Ben Wood's work. Yeah, it was a decent enough performance. The Sophie de Good disallowed try happened literally right under our noses. I mean, if you look on John Timms and the Saracen Supporters Association's Facebook threads, you'll see that we both got photos. The reason that I think they disallowed it, and it was wrong, she had to pull the ball from underneath her body to reach it forward. That's what seemed to make the second movement, but it wasn't a second move. I mean, they get into the realms of minuscule technicality there. It was a perfectly good try. Couldn't see a problem with it. I didn't get the impression necessarily that Trailfinders women were getting penalties that they shouldn't get. I mean, I don't remember feeling aggrieved. I did think that we threw a massive forward pass for one of our tries from Paige Farris to Alicia Corrigan, because I was level with that, and it looked massively forward to me, and that went by the by. And of course, he gave yellow cards to two members of each side. One of them actually for a deliberate knock-on that was almost identical to the Charlie Bracken incident we'll almost certainly come back to in the men's game down in Exeter. The main difference being Charlie had three people coming round behind him, whereas poor old Lauren Leone, she knocked the ball forward, stopped Alicia scoring, and all her defenders were sitting on their backsides. So there wasn't a single defender behind her. So it was a penalty try and off she went. And the one that their flanker got, I thought was a bit harsh, to be quite honest. So not a bad performance. Poppy's was unavoidable. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't even realise Liz Craig had gone for a while. So you'll have to enlighten me as to what happened with her, because I didn't see it.
It was a fourth or fifth penalty in a row. Those things happen. Let's talk about the good, though, shall we, Alex? Because I think there were some standout performances, and we've mentioned Liv Apps already, and it's great to see Liv back. We weren't sure whether she'd still be playing sevens or whatever, but she's back, and she can make a big difference. But the one player who's making a huge difference to that team is Sophie, isn't it? She plays second row, perhaps at Canada a bit more often in the back row, but at number 8, she's just explosive. And it's her intelligence, though, that really makes them. And I think they were picking up the try that she was awarded, where she'd set the game going from a quick penalty, then got up to make the third. I mean, she just makes runs. She knows where that ball's going to be, and she's like a magnet to that ball.
She's come back with a point to prove to say, I am World Player of the Year. I am now going to be getting back to my best. She's had some time out injured. So actually, I think kind of she showed that a lot on Sunday, just saying, this is what I can do. And she has that tactical knowledge to be, actually, I am going to just kick the ball through here because I know I don't want to run traffic, or actually, no, this is another time I'm going to take it into contact. And I think that's what sometimes we've been missing a bit from other players when we've had younger players there, is saying, oh, this is what the best option is, but actually she's got that tactical knowledge as well as that physicality to actually really add something to the team.
But the one thing that you do need, if you're going to be a superstar player, is you need somebody in that team doing the grunt work, doing the unseen stuff, doing the hard yards, the hard jacker, to give it a cricket term. And Gabby Sent on the blind side was that player, reminiscent of the great Richard Hill in the way that she was just doing some unseen stuff that allows other players to flow and to do spectacular stuff. And without Gabby Sent in that team on the weekend and in other games, you don't get that bit of grunt that you need sometimes.
Yeah, and she did the 80 minutes as well. She's a great athlete, great competitor, one of the most fearless individuals you'll ever see on a rugby field. And yeah, she does the dirty jobs that everybody needs done. Can I have a little moan, though, about, as you've mentioned, Sophie, before we move away from it? Please will someone tell her to stop throwing no-look passes? She put 2 on the deck and threw 1 interception in her player of the match performance. I've noticed the men have largely stopped doing it now, but I mean, a no-look pass is great if you're going to pass it to absolutely no one. But I'd like to see the whole practice stopped. And that's the last thing I'm going to say about a magnificent athlete, a brilliant rugby player who was a very deserving player of the match. But she did throw an interception in the midst of that, in case anybody had forgot. But no, Gabby Sent, I totally take your point on that. And as a former back row forward yourself, to sort of blindside you and have playing alongside you, isn't it?
In defence of Sophie, if you're throwing no-look passes, the responsibility, as Sam will tell you, undoubtedly is for the support players to get there.
Absolutely.
And to read what she's going to do, which sometimes is difficult when the player doing it is such a world-class player that, you know, you can't hope to be on the same plane as them.
But at the same time, if you chuck one of those and it comes off, it's highlight reel and it's magnificent, isn't it? But more often than not, they don't.
The game was great. It is just a precursor. It's the hors d'oeuvre, shall we say, the canapé before the home semi-final. And we're going to talk about us going down to Sandy Park in a bit for the men and coming up second best. But Alex, your confidence is there. I'm going to tee you up again. There you go. Volley this one in the top bins. Home semi against Exeter Chiefs. How well are we going to do? What attitude are we going to see going into that game? And what's the performance going to be like?
I think the attitude will be, we've beaten them plenty of times before. We know we can do it. We're going to do it. We're in form going in to the semi-final. We're absolutely capable of doing it. We're not going to lose. We've had situations where we've been in tight games this season against Bristol where we had Zoe Harrison's penalty that won the game. So actually saying we know how to win tight games and we're just going to win. Almost there's no other option apart from us getting to that final. And we've got the players to be able to do that.
Talking of one of those players that we've got to do that, this game at the StoneX is going to be the last time we see Marlie Packer at the StoneX in a Saracen shirt. Bit of a surprise announcement today, Loxie, that's come out on the Monday, albeit given the amount of movement that there has been around the PWR with players leaving Gloucester to go to Sale or whatever. We're not entirely certain what's happening there. We can only assume she's moving on, though, because I can't imagine she'd be retiring with a British Lions tour in the offing next year. But a bit of a surprise, Loxie.
Yeah, as an SSA media man, it caught me completely on the hop. I was in the middle of the motorway and I was an hour late posting it up. So I was asked that question and I just had to say, no, caught completely by surprise by the whole thing. I'm with you. I thought she'd been extending her career with the Lions tour in mind. I know that she would want to end her Saracens career not with a loss to Gloucester Hartbury or the previous year when we went out at home in the semi-finals of Bristol Bears. Beware, everybody, that has happened in recent memory. It's a bit of a face, and obviously it's going to throw up the question of what's going to happen to or with Rosie Galligan, her partner, who's currently pregnant, expecting what will be Marley's second child. So, oh gosh, I've no idea. I wish I could throw in a few thoughts. Absolutely no idea. Caught on the hop.
It's going to be weird if Marlie does go off and play somewhere else. We are really thinking out loud and just running ideas up the flagpole. See, salutes them, Samba. Is she going to be going off as a player coach somewhere, which is an opportunity that hasn't arisen at Saracen saw or whatever. If you do see Marlie turn up at StoneX wearing a Bristol shirt or an Exeter shirt or a Gloucester shirt or whatever, it's going to be weird, isn't it?
It really will. For an absolute club legend, it's going to come across very, very odd and can't be retirement, can it? Because of that Lions tour, and surely that would have been announced in the fact that she's leaving. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a bit like Ellie Kildun, isn't it? It's all up in the air at the moment and there's a lot of movement and no one really knows what's happening next.
Personally, I thought she'd be one of those players that you'd carry out in the proverbial box, and chair her off and put her in a nice bath and whatever at the end of the game.
I've just had a look for someone in the know. She has completed her coaching badges now. That might actually be significant to the discussion.
We wait and see what happens, and whatever happens, we'll be all over it when the decision's made. We'll have a break there, though, and we're going to come back. And first of all, I'm going to have a bit of a moan about the start of the game, and then I'm going to tell you how you can all get involved in something we're going to do in a couple of weeks' time on the Fezcast.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for £10. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at StoneX. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Let's have a chat about going down to the southwest, where Sam's left most of his liver, it appears, and talk about the end of the men's season. But before we do that, it's the end of an era, because that was, along with all the players who are no longer going to be Saracens, that was Mark McCall's last game as Director of Rugby of Saracens. This is where I'm going to have a moan, because I watched the coverage on ITV. And first up, you had a great interview that Mark did with Nick Mullins. Nick, former guest on the Fezcast, brilliant guy, asked some really, really good questions and got a really fantastic interview out of Mark. And I know from the interview with Mark that it's not the easiest thing in the world. He's quite a guarded private man. Some of the answers he's got is fantastic. And it was lovely to see that. I had a bit of a tear in my eye. And then they went back to pitch side. And Brian O'Driscoll couldn't hide his distaste. And then Sarah Elgin went off and interviewed Rob Baxter and gave Rob Baxter the opportunity to pay tribute to a fellow director of rugby. And Rob Baxter couldn't bring himself to mention Mark McCall's name in that answer and turned it all around to about Exeter, which showed an absolute lack of class that I felt was only surpassed by the behaviour of some of the Exeter Chiefs fans you saw on the footage and some of the gestures they were making at Jamie George. And then in commentary, we had Alistair Eakin, who took all of about 20 seconds, Charlie Bracken's first box kick, and he mentioned the salary cap. And quite frankly, angered me. And it angered me in a way that I followed through the rest of the game. And when we discussed refereeing and performances and everything, you could see why I was in a pretty beeped off mood right from the start.
Yeah, and I think that might have coloured your view on Carl Dixon a little bit going through, because I know you had some strong things to say. I'm not a big Carl Dixon fan, but to be honest, I suffered far less with him than I have done in some previous occasions. Don't be too hard on the Chiefs fans. On the whole, they're a pretty decent lot. The sort of animus that we get from Rob Baxter and Tony Rowe generally doesn't come over when you're a visitor there. And I have had people coming onto the Saracen Supporters Association match post saying, oh, what were the crowd like? They were this, they were that. Were they racist? Were they aggressive? No, they weren't racist and they weren't aggressive. I don't know where that nonsense comes from. And I really think there's got to be a lessening of this sort of talk. Things will change a lot at Exeter Chiefs when Tony Rowe steps down, which is imminent. Rob Baxter feels he was cheated, and no one's ever going to change his mind about that. Alistair Eakin, though, he wants to have a look at himself. I won't watch the game again because I've heard that he's commentating, and I'll only end up as upset as you. I do think that his anti-Saracens bias, whereas Nick Mullins manages to remain neutral, as a good commentator should, is more than depressing. It's actually rather angry.
It was straight from the top, Sam, that Tony Bracken puts a kick up. It was a good kick. And all he's worried about is Rob Baxter being hard done by poor me, blah-de-blah-de-blah.
I watched back the TNT coverage and there wasn't any such bias or anything along those lines at all. But Rob Baxter's going to be Rob Baxter. He will take that to the grave and feel hard done by till the day he dies. I like Loxley. I was in the grandstand. It made a change that we was actually surrounded by Saracens fans on an away game that I attended. But even the Exeter fans, it was a good bit of banter. There was nothing unjust, untoward. It didn't get anything uncomfortable or anything like that at all. The last time I was down there was the Goody kick to win it right at the death, and that got a bit tasty at the end as well. So this time around, I didn't see it. Everyone was very, very kind. There was a good bit of banter, but unfortunately, Rob Baxter's going to be Rob Baxter, and he's never going to let that go.
What we do have to mention is the fact that Mark McCall, that was his last game. As Monksfield Ollie said in the 3-word reviews, he called it a damp squid. There was Rich WFC2, he said change coming thankfully. James K11106 said mentality change needed, which Adam, Mills 20A, has said Dr. Brendan Venter. Those are a few negatives about Mark, which I don't think he deserves. We've discussed it ad infinitum going through this season that perhaps, this was the time, or maybe his time was a little while ago to go. But at the end of the day, you cannot look at Mark McCall and say anything other than, well, I was interviewed by Vassos Alexander this morning on Track Radio, and I made the claims I've done on here on a number of occasions that Mark McCall not only is the GOAT of rugby union coaches, but I believe he's got a hand on the trophy of GOAT of any coach, any sport, Alex.
What he's done with Saracens over the years, what he's achieved with them is massive. And actually, even this season, to the fact that the last weekend, we're still fighting for a playoff place. A couple of months ago, we would have said we're not in the running. So actually to get to the last weekend of the season and go, there's still an opportunity for us to make the playoffs is impressive. I think for Mark McCall, he's a great coach, and actually what he's done over the years at Saracens is amazing.
Yeah, he walks away from that head held high, proud as can be. We're going to do a special show in a couple of weeks' time. We're going to do a tribute show, which gives you, the Fezcast listenership, the opportunity to send us some thoughts, messages, memories of Mark McCall. And what we need you to do is to go onto the Buzzsprout site. You can go in and click on a button that says send a voice message. Go on there and record on your phone some messages for Mark McCall, some memories, some anecdotes, whatever. Did you meet Mark? What's your favourite moment of Mark's tenure as Saracens director of rugby? Anything you want to talk about, you get about a minute's worth of time to do it, which is plenty of time. And then what we'll do is we'll put that into a special... Well, Duncan's going to put that into a special show. We're tucking him up with that technological thing, but, I mean, he should be able to cope with that. And that will be something that we'll play in on the 24th of June, which will be hopefully our last but one show, because the show after that will be award shows and celebrate a win in the women's PWR final. We'll put the links up on Facebook and on X and on Instagram as well and everything like that. So you've got a week or so to get those in over the next 10 days, and then we'll put that together for the 24th. We'll take a break there, though, and we'll actually go in a bit more finite detail about the actual game down at Sandy Park.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And yes, it was a bit of a damp squib, as Ollie said. It was the end of the season, not the end of the season we wanted, but what was it that Grant Osborne said? Realistic, not disappointing. And I suppose that's it. We have talked about 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks ago, Sam, we were saying there's not a chance of us getting into the playoffs. And then we went on a run that was the form run. If we had that run from the start of the season, we'd have been at top of the league by an absolute country mile and nobody would have stuck with us. Was it a bridge too far, the Tamar Bridge, or whatever the bridge is down there, or did they do as well as expected? Mark Bright said fifth feels generous. I think fifth feels just about right.
As do I, to be fair. Leicester, home, were the only team that we beat. You are the best of the worst, if you like. We did go on a run and it gave us all hope. And me, of all people, really got sucked into it and thought, yeah, going down there, it was always going to be a difficult task and you've got to favour Exeter at home. Let's be realistic. But how we played felt like we were playing before we went on the run. Nothing flowed, having watched it back without the emotion, without the alcohol. It was stuttery. The wind was here, there and everywhere. And it was actually quite humid as well. So the attack never seemed to get going. And Charlie and his box kicking, it was difficult in that conditions. But when we got down there, that pass to fresh air that he did when we were right on their line, you just felt that when Rossi didn't get that pass down for the try, that it wasn't going to be our day. Also as well, it's a big pitch, isn't it, Sandy Park? And it's far bigger than the Stonex. So that probably played something into it. But stuff that was coming off just never came off. It was a damp squib.
I'm going to pick up, before I talk about the conditions, because I think the conditions were quite a big factor in the game, because I think the conditions in the first half were right against us and they didn't seem to be as bad for Exeter Chiefs in the second half. But I'm going to pick up Ollie Monksfield, another 3-word review from Ollie. Usual Dixon bias. And I'm going to come to Loxie here because I'm going to give Loxie the chance to reply here. I just do not like Carl Dixon as a referee. He's not good enough. There was one point where they had to go to the TMOs and Luke Pearce was talking him through it in a way that you'd expect Luke Pearce, as an experienced referee, to talk through a guy on his first or second match. But Carl Dixon's 100 games in as a referee and he's an international referee and he needs his touch lino to be talking him through it. And there were stuff that he missed, whether it's an unconscious bias or a conscious bias. But one of the tries that Chiefs got, there was a crocodile roll on Ben Earl that caused the ball to come out. I felt personally, I'd have called it as a crocodile roll. And maybe I'm showing my pro-Saracens bias there. Also, the Rossi try, why nobody looked at Bambo Brown coming in and jumping on top of Rossi. And that's something I hate seeing in the game, that when a player's gone to ground, wingers come across, the tackle's being completed, Rossi's going in, okay, he's lost it, but the winger's come in and dropped a knee on the small of his back, could have hurt him badly, and we've seen those. And I didn't like. And I also felt that half of our problem was that the accuracy came because the Exeter Chiefs offside line was around about 3 yards as opposed to 10 yards. In particular, the one that Ollie Hartley dropped, where Brian O'Driscoll was so quick to say that someone from the Saracens line out had stepped outside the 15, and I didn't think they had. Harvey Skinner was stood next to Ollie Hartley as he took the ball, and no wonder he dropped it because all he could see was Harvey Skinner sat there. Am I reading it wrong, Loxie?
I'm not surprised about the things you're saying, but I'd put a slightly different slant on it. I mean, who does like Carl Dixon? The Exeter fans certainly don't, I can assure you. I've never been at a game where either set of fans had a good word to say for him. So it's a little bit like the BBC. Everybody hates it, so they must be neutral. So take bias out of it. I just don't think he's very good. Now, that's a whole different matter, and that's a matter for him and his assessors to sort out. No, he's not biased. I just don't think he's very good. And the offside line, I mean, you mentioned Luke Pearce. Why wasn't he picking it up? That was his responsibility, wasn't it? He and the other touch judge. So if we're complaining about offside, we can't really laud Luke Pearce too highly either, who didn't look very fit, to be quite honest. I know he's come back from a long-term injury, and I thought he looked unfit when he refereed, and I thought he looked unfit again this week, but he's got to find his way back. No, Carl Dixon wasn't a big problem in that game, really. Look, we had a good run, right? But look at those fixtures. We got the run of the fixtures. It was a lovely fixture list running into this game. And, of course, we had nothing to lose. But as soon as we got to a situation where there was something to lose, as Sam's pointed out, all the old problems came back. Now, as soon as Charlie Bracken left for the field, and we lost the game in that 10-minute spell pretty much, and then they all lost their heads. They all got rattled. Fergus Burt got rattled, although he took an almighty clattering blow to the head, which might not have helped him at any sort. But they were all yelling, gesticulating, going after the touch judges, going after the referee. It was like a bad replay to some of the worst parts of the early part of the season. Yeah, if we'd got that fixture list, we might have had a good start to the season or a better start to the season. But I think we were a little bit flattered by that fixture list going in. You see, we went all round the houses and had this brilliant run to get exactly to where we were last season, which was to go to an away match with a chance of making the playoffs. And we damn nearly did it at Saints. And they beat us in the last minute, as they've been doing ever since. This time, though, we were well beat and well beaten before the end of that game. And I'll tell you the thing that really epitomised it for me. After Nick Ezekwe's try towards the end, we started flinging the ball around willy-nilly. It ended up on the ground. Stephen Varney's picked it up and ran after the length of the field. I sat a whole afternoon at Bath watching that happen about 5 times. And I thought, oh, heck, back to that again. So let's not get too carried away on any front. Exeter were much better focused than we were. They were much calmer than we were. And they seemed to understand that they were the team destined to win that game. As soon as we had a little bit of a setback, the wheels came off in all directions. It doesn't matter how experienced the players were. The experienced players were shouting and flapping their arms about just as much as the younger ones were.
I'm not going to be as critical as you were there, Loxy. You're fully entitled to be critical, and you've explained it beautifully how you feel that way. I mean, there's a little part for me that we seem to care too much, and I think we went into that game with the attitude that they wanted to send Mark off with a win and taking that further, and that pressure told heavily. Because I don't actually think that Exeter Chiefs played brilliantly, but then they didn't have to play brilliantly, which supports what Loxy's just said. But they capitalised on mistakes. One of our 3-word reviews is competitive until half-time from London Irish lad 1, Sean Duffy. We were competitive until half-time, and, you know, if a couple of things had gone and a bit more accurate, we hadn't tried to push the envelope too far, we could have been, and probably should have been, ahead. Is that fair as well?
Yeah, I think we definitely didn't take the chances we had in the first half. And then after half-time, it was just like, it hasn't really worked in the first half. And actually, we don't really seem to have a plan B. Whereas in other matches, we've had that plan B, that plan C when stuff's gone wrong. But actually, this time, we let the pressure get to us and then didn't have a backup and no one knew what to do. And then it just kind of fell apart.
You know, we've had that run in where we've gone into games, we've played some really good, scintillating rugby. And that blueprint worked in those games. But then, if you do look at those games, you're playing Bristol Bears who were on the beach. You're playing Sale Sharks who were on the beach. You're playing Harlequins who did try and get up for the game, but are just useless. You know, it was a bridge too far, wasn't it? I think that continually getting up, going out there, playing with the brakes off and everything. And they tried to go into this game and play with the brakes off, and as soon as it went wrong, they didn't know what to do.
Your point about the wind dropping in the second half, yes, it did. But Fergus Burke was still able to kick the ball 3 times further than he was in the first half. You know, I won't say that it was a massive demerit, but the problem is, I mean, we didn't contest that game until half-time. We contested it till 2 minutes before half-time. When Charlie went off the field, he was barely off the park before they scored a converted try. And in the 9-odd minutes that went after that, there was Henry Slade got a try and a penalty. So, I mean, that's a hell of a big swing round. I mean, you know, a converted try, another try and a penalty in that 10-minute spell. By the time we got back to 15 players, all the momentum had gone and a certain amount of panic had set in, as Alex sort of alluded to there. And, you know, there really wasn't a way back. Exeter Chief just had to stick to doing the basics well. Like you say, Jez, they didn't do anything special, but they didn't really have to. They just had to keep their heads, which, to be fair, Exeter teams haven't done in the past. They were serial chokers for quite a time. Now, we wouldn't appreciate you saying that, but there's plenty of evidence to back it up. No, we looked like the chokers on the day, I'm afraid, and that sounds a bit brutal, but we did. They looked like the team who kept their composure, and, you know, it counts for a lot sometimes.
The important thing to say is that we didn't lose out a top 4 position on this one game. The games where we got beat by Quins away, the games that we played against teams above us and didn't win and played some pretty dog poo rubbish rugby, in the middle of the season. That's where we lost that opportunity to be in the top four. This is where the change is needed, is because 5 years ago, we'd never been in that position. We would have qualified by now. And Mark McCall knew how to get teams to qualify for that. Very nearly pulled off, but it would have been a bit of a travesty to the other teams around us if we had gone and done that on Exeter in the weekend.
This run, it covered over the cracks, and those cracks reappeared at the weekend when we didn't want them to. And look, we are what we are at the moment, and that team, or this team for this season, is what it is. But we gave it a go, and we gave it a good run. But at the end of the day, yeah, we weren't good enough. We got beat, and we got beat well by the better team.
Of course, let's look for a silver lining, Alex, to finish off this week's episode. The lads now go away for a few weeks. They've got an extra 2 weeks holiday, refresh, come back under the doctor.
Now just having a break, and then next season, it's a fresh start. We can go again. We can, it's new coaches, bringing in some new players and actually saying, last season was okay, but this season we need to be better. We need to be more consistent. We need to be more composed and actually win games that we are very capable of winning, and keeping to do that so that we keep building towards actually putting ourselves in a place where it's not coming down to the last weekend of a season to get into a semi-final.
Hopefully, Brendan Venter will do the reset on Loxley. I mean, how are you seeing what's going to happen? Because obviously the other thing that's happened this week is that a certain Farrell Senior has signed a new contract with the Irish Rugby, so we won't be seeing Andy Farrell coaching the Saracens. However, Sean Edwards has left his post with France with immediate effect, hasn't he? So, I mean, there are potentials out there again. Are we now convinced that, though, that Brendan is going to hand over the reins to Faz Jr.?
Faz Jr. is pretty far down the coaching pecking order, though. I mean, there's players of his vintage who sit above him. I mean, nobody mentioned Steve Borthwick, and I don't suppose anybody will again after I just mentioned it there, but he made a good old Saracens man, former captain of the club, former coach at the club, former international coach, but who'd want him? Probably nobody at the moment.
Not me.
So Sean Edwards, yeah, give me that. I purely put that out there in the spirit of devil's advocacy and nothing else, because whenever I've mentioned it to anybody else, I've just done it to see what reaction I got. And it's always very satisfying and gratifying when I do it. I'm not quite sure. I mean, what Brendan will do is work on the attitude and the spirit a little bit. Things have got a little bit cosy, maybe. I can see him reinforcing some of the values that he had originally. He's a nice bloke, but he's a more draconian fellow than Mark McCall is. I think anybody would agree with that, including the two men who are great friends. If the club needs pulling together on a spiritual level, I think he's got a job to do, but I do think the other coaches have got a big job to do as well. I think Rob Webber stepped up well this season. I think Di Flanagan has started to show some decent signs, and we've still got one or two others. But I mean, this handing on to Faz Jr. thing, he's miles off it. I mean, there's so many people in front of him there. I mean, people like Duncan Taylor and, Sean Maitland, for example, in the pecking order, and a fair few others. And just for the hell of it, I never thought Andy Farrell was going to come. I did think that there was every chance, and all this rumour mongering did was make him sign his new contract quicker. I don't know. I mean, Brendan Venter's given up a GP practice, hasn't he, in South Africa when he didn't even have to. It's a funny thing to do if you're only intending to be at it for 12 months.
The one thing I will say on the case of Owen Farrell as a potential coach in 2 years' time is I'll give you a football correlation. In, was it 1988, was it, something like that, when Joe Fagan stepped down as Liverpool manager, everybody looked at the next taxi cab off the rank in the boot run. It was going to be Roy Evans and Ronnie Moore take over. And then they suddenly went, Kenny Dalglish as player manager. There is the potential there that they could look at it. And, if they're an exceptional candidate, then fair dues. The one thing I will say, Sam, and I did point this out the other day, is that not necessarily do exceptional players make exceptional coaches. Sometimes they do. So if you actually have a look at the coaches in the Premiership at the moment, I would suggest that probably only Pat Lam was the truly world-class player. Phil Dowson was a pretty good player. Skivington at Gloucester was a pretty decent, honest player. But the rest of them, not necessarily. I mean, Mark McCall wasn't a fantastic player. You know, he was a pretty good player. He played international rugby, but that attitude of, does a superstar player become a superstar coach? Sometimes they do, but it's more often than not, they don't.
Very true. I'll go against Loxie here as well. I do think Owen is in waiting, and I do think he jumps above those people that he's mentioned. I just think it comes back to the rugby league mentality. I think he'll make a fantastic coach in time, not straight away. I think he is destined to do it. You look at his dad, fantastic player. It comes back to those league players. Whether we jump to him straight away, I don't think we will. I think he might even go away again and then come back. He needs a time served, but definitely Sarri's DOR in waiting somewhere along the line, but not yet and not straight away, but we'll see. But yeah, I'd have the Sean Edwards thing all day long. I'll be a very happy man if that happened. I'm really excited for next year, and I'm interested to see the senior players that have got comfortable that haven't been under him before. How are they going to react? That is something that I'm really looking forward to seeing.
One of those players is Owen Farrell, of course.
Yes, of course, yes, yeah.
He came in as a 19-year-old under Mark McCall.
He did, yeah.
That's all for next season. Alex, thank you for your time. Obviously, we're looking forward to your input. Now you've got no exams, we can book you in for the next couple of shows. Good to talk about the women and everything. And, you'll be full of beans next week after seeing them beat Exeter at StoneX on the weekend. And thank you, Loxie. Thank you, Sam, for your time. And thank you, everybody. And remember to go onto our Buzzsprout site. We'll put the links up on all our different social medias and everything about how you can leave some messages for Mark McCall and some memories and whatever, which will be coming up in a couple of weeks' time. Next week, though, we will be looking back on the women's game against Exeter Chiefs. And I think also we'll probably do our men's awards next week. So there you go. We'll say thank you, everybody, for listening in. And we'll speak to you next week on the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.